So, Mark, was there just something about 2012 that really made people produce good video games? Something in the water, perhaps an impending apocalypse that just pushed people to do their best?
I think so, man, because even though it was supposed to be the end of the world, I feel like we had a really good time getting there if it was indeed going to be the last moments of this earth.
I mean,
So,
so what you're telling me is that it was the end of the world as we know it, and yet we felt fine.
I was going to say,
Yeah.
I felt pretty good. I mean, I was playing some of my favorite games, so it's
hmm
funny how we stayed in this year. I don't think it was by design, but it's time for another retro review. Last time we visited Far Cry 3, which was in the same year, and we actually happened to mention the game that we're covering tonight, which is Borderlands 2, which, Joe, this is a
hmm
core memory for me. I don't know about you.
I mean, it's definitely a different core memory because this is one where you brought me on to
That's
um,
right.
to the Borderlands area. I think we actually. I'm trying to think if you introduced me to this one before the first one, actually, because you were in the midst of trying to platinum the game, and then I jumped in and we used your save file. We could play online together. So I was at like level one, like doing like not able to do a whole lot, and you're at like level 40, and you're just destroying everything in my game, and I'm just leveling up like crazy.
Yes.
I think that's how we handled me playing this game.
Uh, the early time that we played this game together, you definitely had like the little brother holding the controller, but not really feeling like it was doing anything because
hmm
even though it was plugged in spiritually, it didn't feel like it was. And
Yeah.
but that's what's great about these games though. Like that wasn't just Borderlands 2 you could do that. Borderlands 1
hmm
you could also just kind of sidecar it as a lower level and get power leveled like crazy, in just a
hmm
very short period of time. But Borderlands 2 is one of those unique games that absolutely obliterates the original in every possible way. I mean,
And one of the ways that I think it really does this, because you can look at it, a lot of the things are the same, where we're looking at how a lot of times we complain about sequels just trying to recapture lightning in a bottle, because we've got the same classes that are in this game. We've got even very similar characters in this game. The characters from the first game are like cinematic characters, so we get to see them here, even though we don't get to play as them. But what I think really sets this game apart from the first is the introduction of Handsome Jack, the antagonist.
mm,
Because, like we've said before, good villains can make a franchise, and that's something that the first game didn't really have. It was chaos in the way of us trying to open the vault. And that chaos is very much still there. That is the planet Pandora. But now, on top of that, we have a very handsome face that we want to punch.
isn't it weird though how Borderlands 1 suffers from the same thing that Far Cry 3 does, which
hmm
is you have like an antagonist that change, partway through, and
hmm
so it's nice. It's actually kind of refreshing that Borderlands 2 didn't do that. It was a very strong like entrance for Handsome Jack. Like you get through the intro of the game and he's already trying to kill you. Like we're not even
Yeah.
talking the first like 5 minutes of gameplay. We're talking like the opening cinematic. You're a fresh, brand new group of vault hunters who apparently didn't hear about the topic of the first game, which is
No.
don't open the vaults, which usually contain some kind of alien, ancient beasts that just want to devour
hmm
you. So just a tip to the kids out there: don't do drugs, don't open vaults. Just a little bit of
No.
advice for you.
There's no treasure in there. It's just doom. And it's great that we do have Handsome Jack to kind of hate through the entire game because, when he just calls you butt stallion off the get-go, if we were to finish him off like halfway through and have to go against someone else, I don't think there's a worse thing that could be done to me that would make me hate the person more. It's like, no, no, no. I killed the guy who called me butt stallion. I'm good. I don't need to play this game anymore. So having him the entire time really does add to the value of this game.
See, now I'm not sure if I just remember this randomly or if this is actual truth or not, but I'm
hmm
pretty sure he either ad libbed the butt stallion part where he talks about this, crystal horse that he has that he's trying to
Mm-hmm.
name. And then there's also a part where he calls you on the comms in the very beginning where he's literally just eating pretzels or something. And like you can hear the shuffling of the bag and him chewing, and it's like he's a bad guy that you obviously need to hate, but at the same time, Damian
Mm-hmm.
Clark, who voices him, who if you don't know who Damian Clark is by name, he's one of my favorite characters from Supernatural, the Rougarou, who literally feasts on human flesh and becomes this nasty monster. But this character of Handsome Jack, like, yes, bad dude, but also you kind of like him.
Mm-hmm.
it's
Yeah.
it's really weird. It's a
Mm-hmm.
weird balance.
It is. And I mean, this series would, of course, go on to explore more of Handsome Jack's background with the pre-sequel. And that also, which we won't get too much into, but part of our love and like love-hate relationship with Handsome Jack, it expands on that to the point where it does a good job of helping you understand why Handsome Jack does what he does, but it doesn't
Yeah,
give excuses for him or make you
yeah.
like sympathize for him. It's like, no, okay, I get why he's doing this now. Still an asshole, but I get why he's doing it.
So there's actually a lot of compelling things about this game that were maybe briefly mentioned in one that carry over into two. And I think at the core of Borderlands 2, yes, you have a great villain in Handsome Jack, but you also have this story about what they build on from one, where you really just have these warring corporations who are trying to use these foreign planets for their resources, and they're all fighting each other, killing each other,
Mm-hmm.
trying to take advantage. And so this carryover from the first game, which really kind of more focused on Dahl and the Atlas Corporation. You see like their construction equipment, you meet some of their leaders and their militias that they have, their private armies that they've constructed, and Hyperion is the corporation that Handsome Jack operates. So he runs the giant H ship in the sky that you see, right? Like you can
Mm-hmm.
see it everywhere in the game. It's floating up like a billboard. And I always laughed at it because it's like it's just this giant H floating out there in space, and I'm like, there's no way that that's aerodynamic, but whatever.
No.
It's
Mm-hmm.
brand
It's like
recognition.
the
Okay,
it's like the Teen Titans headquarters. Like, really? We can't find the Teen Titans? It's a giant T on an island. There's this big old H sitting up there in the sky.
he's handsome.
Think of all the
You know,
things.
I I've got to say though, before we even get into like the gameplay and stuff, I have to mention that the first game, even though it did have some like plot issues, the core game itself and the ability to randomly generate millions upon millions of pieces of weaponry and just loot in general,
Hmm.
obviously that concept worked. And a lot of people
Yes.
when they first played it, they found that out. Like there's a good balance of a really cool first person shooter slash RPG element going on here where you can actually customize a character. But from one to two, they ended up getting like $35 million dollars to build the sequel. And it's because of how solid just that formula was. So you really get to see it in just
Hmm.
the style, the look, the feel. I mean, the talent that's involved in this game. I mean, what
Yeah.
what did you think? Just like first
Well,
impressions as you drop into the ice.
one thing that I really appreciated with this game is that it had the concept of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Uh, they're like a lot of games will I've griped about how going from Assassin's Creed 3 to Unity and like the combat system, in my opinion, took a huge nosedive going from one to the other. This game was like, hey, the combat worked just fine in the first game. We're gonna leave that be. So
Yeah.
like it felt like you were basically in the same car but on a new road with this game because it handled the way you wanted it to. There were no real like surprises in that suddenly like, hey, we've changed how you reload, we've changed how you do anything. That all worked the same, and again keeping the classes basically the same. Um, and making sure the Gunzerker was still there for me, and the name Gunzerker is still there, which is just a
I
brilliant
I,
brilliant
I
name
think
as it
what you
is.
I think what you're getting to is the fact that the Gunzerker has a skill called Sexual Tyrannosaurus, and everybody wanted to get to that skill. Like, to hell with the
Yes.
rest of the character. I just want to know what Sexual Tyrannosaurus is all about.
And I also need to know if I need to purchase chewing tobacco and able to actually be the sexual Tyrannosaurus. But thankfully, not the case. I don't have to worry about getting mouth cancer. So, but yeah, great Predator reference with sexual Tyrannosaurus and the Gunzerker.
Yes. Yes.
And again, like it's basically like the equivalent to like a tank. You just get two big old guns.
Yeah.
You got a little more health. And you just go, go ham at it.
Yeah.
But like the classes worked very similar. Guys, I'm trying to think. Maybe the Siren had different abilities from the first one, because I think that's part of the lore, is that the Sirens are like a rare race and like their abilities are slightly different from each other. So I think that was a little different. Although actually, no, I take that back. So wasn't the soldier class a little bit different? Because I thought I remembered you saying you actually liked the soldier class from the first game a little more than the second.
No, actually, what I was trying to do was to try to figure out, because the soldier class in the first one is your standard DPS dude. He's not going to have like the extravagant like theatrical skills, right? Like he throws out this little turret that forms like a barrier in front of you and just helps fire things. But when I came to 2, I was like, I really love the soldier. That was my favorite class, and I wanted to get the equivalent, which was the commando in this one. And
Yes.
to your point, like the differences are not like stark, but there's little details about these characters that still provide some familiarity, but you are getting some cool things. And that's what I loved about the commando class, is that he has a turret that you can actually throw on different surfaces, and you can actually be pretty tactical with how you want to play the game. Like, if I don't want to go just like rushing into a room, I'll just like throw my little sticky turret out and then kind of wait, see what happens, and then go in there and just start, wrecking shit. So I really think that's one of the strongest things about the Borderlands series, but particularly with 2. And I really enjoyed playing through the skill trees of every like main Vault Hunter, because I went through and I played every one of them, but the Commando is definitely my favorite one. So,
Which does lead us to one of the things that we really do like about this game, and that in a odd way, or kind of a sick way you could think of it, is the hyper violence of the game. It's just so easy to mow down the crazies of Pandora and the irradiated wildlife of the planet, to the point where it just becomes insanely fun to do so. But other than that, I think some of the greatest things that this game has is definitely the humor going into it. Because like I can think of, like, I know initially, I think we talked about before over how maybe you were turned off initially to the first game because of like Claptrap being annoying, but in the second game you've kind of gotten used to Claptrap, and you're meeting him again, even though it's not the him from the first game, because there's a ton of Claptraps out there. And he's got this like beaming, optimistic, kind of up-cheering voice, but he reminds you that he's a robot, but he has feelings, but the voice is programmed. So even though he sounds really happy, he is quite depressed. So getting these like little bits of humor throughout the game just make it that much more fun to play.
It's an interesting concept, because Pandora is very similar to how Australia was a former prison colony, and a very similar type of thing kind of happens with the planet, where obviously you need laborers and people to run the machinery that these companies are using to mine into the planet. And as some of these corporations are vying for power, and some leave and some stay, well, the people that are left there that were working for them, what do they do when they have no one else to work for? They start eating each other, they start going nuts, they start killing each other. But the important thing here in 2 that's really different from 1, as these companies are mining into Pandora and trying to access the vaults, they find this little thing called iridium, which isn't really so much used in the first game, but in the second, it's like they figured out how to refine it, and they figured out how to actually turn it into things. And now that's seeping into nature. I mean, it's like it's like a cautionary tale from what happens with just oil in general, right? it's the same type of thing, except these creatures are becoming super powered and
Yeah.
disgusting stuff you don't want to fuck with. So
It's all bad, and at least like Iridium, I am glad that the production team thought of a name, stuck with it, and that the name makes sense to what it does because it irradiates things. Therefore, Iridium, and not like, oh hey, it's hard to find. We'll call it unobtainium.
ugh,
Still one of the
awful.
worst
Just,
names.
just,
Dumb.
just, just terrible. God damn it, Avatar.
Come on,
But
James Cameron, you're better than that. God damn it.
I, as far as Borderlands 2 goes, like these games do feel pretty linear
Mm-hmm.
because really, I mean, at the core of these games, if you want to just be brutally honest, these are games where you have a lot of ammunition and you fire at things until they stop moving, right? And one was pretty prevalent with that. Like I mean, it practically could have been an on-rails shooter in a lot of ways because you have to move a certain way, you have to do a certain thing to get to
Mm-hmm.
something. Borderlands 2 still kind of has that same formula, but it's a much grander scale. Like it's a much bigger space to kind of play within. And I think that's something that was far better done than the first one did, where you've got these hidden areas, you've got separate places that you can go explore that require a loading screen, right? But
Yeah.
they really expand, and it's just a grander set overall. And that was something I really was quite fond of because as I'm kind of going through, you know me, Joe, I never do something the way that the programmers intended. So
No. No.
I ended up
I
finding
mean,
all of these like hidden goodies before I even got through the story.
this is
Yeah.
also why Mark doesn't read books because Mark would go from chapter 1 and just jump to 5 because he was in the mood.
Yeah.
So, like, if you give him a path and a set of directions and say he has to do it, he's going to give you the finger.
I was gonna say if
Just go and do something else.
The Kama Sutra didn't mean for you to just stay within the first 10 pages, okay? They
Mm-mm.
meant for you to get to the back of the book, okay? So I'm not just gonna have sex with my socks on, Joe. Who's meant to do that? Come on.
And that's only on Wednesday because those are business socks, Mark.
Yeah, exactly. But
Hmm.
I got to say the weapons in this game I absolutely fell in love with because of the fact that customization went a step further. Whereas in the
Hmm.
first game you could adjust certain things, but
Oh yeah.
I really love the fact that in this one you could get some pretty crazy looking patterns and really kind of like actually set into your character a bit more because
Hmm.
they have like the changing station. I think it's called like the new you station or something like that. And this they really leaned into this hard, whether it was different character skins, different like heads and helmets, and there's like different themes. There's like a Minecraft theme that you can actually put on your character and all that.
Hmm.
So they really did focus on making this game like as immersive as they could compared to what one had, right? And whether
Yeah.
that's budgetary limitations, hardware limitations, whatever, they really went hard after that. And so I really
Hmm.
appreciated what they did here.
Yeah, and maybe that's what they said to themselves when they realized how much bigger the budget was. It's like, if we've got this much more funding, how much more can we really do with this game? As opposed to just putting out the same thing and tweaking a few things here and there, which I know kind of sounds like I said that's what I liked about the game, but that was just one aspect of the game. Okay. There was so much more like to this. Like clearly again, like, yeah, the combat was about the same, like weapons felt the same, and that was what needed to stay the same. But everything else around that, they tweaked and changed, and you could really see that they either were able to put more effort in or wanted to put more effort in this time around.
Well, there's quite a bit of things that I think they put more effort into this time around. And I know we've talked a lot about mechanics of the game. There's
Hmm.
there's certain functions we'll save for the gameplay later, but one thing I do want to mention is that this story is so much better anchored than the first one. And
Hmm.
I don't want to beat it up. I mean, I get it. You gotta start somewhere and you gotta keep moving on. But this game, I I was actually kind of taken aback by how much the story sucked me in. And there's a reason why I still talk to you about this game at random times. There's a reason why the story arc of Handsome Jack is so compelling, because he
Hmm.
really is like a full-assed bad guy. Like you,
Yeah.
and I have the entirety of his character arc behind me now, but I didn't when I played this. So I would say just the core of what happens in this game is compelling enough. But I do want to call out a couple specific things. And one of them is actually how you have to enlist the help of the Vault Hunters from the first game, as you talked about,
Hmm.
because in the first game, we're just kind of vying for power. We're kind of trying to acquire better weapons and the most powerful shit on Pandora.
Yeah.
In this game, though, Hyperion has really taken over the entire planet, and so it's actually more of a rebellion than it is just like a standard sci-fi romp where we're killing aliens and having
Hmm.
sex with different colored people. So it's like it's a much different attitude that comes into play. And so if you enjoyed the characters from the first game, you get to experience a little bit more of them in this one. That attachment that I had to them, I did not realize just how much it was going to be tested until I played this game.
Yeah, I do remember like playing the second game, be like, huh, those Gen 1 guys, they're kind of dicks. Kind of dicks.
Well, I mean, they are. Some of them are kind of dickish towards you. You're right, because
Hmm.
they do kind of feel like pulling, John Wick out of retirement kind of thing. But
Yeah.
what I'm referring to specifically is how you do kind of recruit these people to help you in this rebellion. And one of them is Mordecai, who is like the hunter class from the first game. And he has Bloodwing, who is his little, trusty, bird companion that he can throw out there and attack things with.
Hmm.
And yes, this game has been out for over 10 years, but Joe and I do believe in not ruining the best stuff. The what happens between Mordecai and Bloodwing in this game made me like physically upset when it went down. Like it physically made me angry, and I just went, I love this game. It made me feel something,
Hmm.
right? And that doesn't happen with first person shooters typically. This one managed to pull it off.
I was gonna say, in the world of first-person shooters, most of the time it is definitely the multiplayer that gets all the love, and the story is just kind of there. So it is kind of it's a fun relief that we can see that the story does have a lot of love put into it to make you feel about what's going on with the characters from the past and the present with this video game. And of course, like obviously, like the multiplayer aspect of it is different in that it's not like PvP, capture the flag, that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But it's still a fun way to interact with your friends and play through this game. And that's something we can touch on more when we get to the rating and the ranking here. But yeah, there is just a whole lot to love in this game, whether it is the characters, the storytelling, or just kind of like the aesthetic is what I want to get to with this too, because that's something that they definitely kept from the first game, which in some series that'll change from time to time. Like Uncharted is my benchmark, and you can clearly see how like things got basic. They were basically the same the first three games, and then after The Last of Us was such a huge success, Uncharted 4 felt like it was the love child of Uncharted and The Last of Us, and we changed a bit. But here
Hmm.
we have Borderlands 2, and it has that same kind of fun sense of things because it's cell shaded. So
Yeah.
it's the same thing that people complained about, like when the Legend of Zelda went from Majora's Mask to the Wind Waker, and now it seems to be more whimsical. But honestly, I think it's something this game needs because when we look at like the actual environment of Pandora and what the people are doing on it, it's kind of like Bratislava.
It's good you came in summer. In winter, it can get very depressing.
So the cell shading does help with that quite a bit.
Which is it's hilarious to think, because we covered the Borderlands history in season 1 of this program. we did go through how the actual cell shading and all of this stuff that happened was a late term development for the game,
Mm-hmm.
that they completely shifted art direction. They abandoned like 18 months of development time to do that. And there's some hurt feelings, of course, but the cell shading continues to work well here. And
Yeah.
it fits the attitude and the rest of the game, because that inherent humor, I think, kind of lends itself to feel like you're living like a live action comic, but like
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
still off the page kind of feel, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so I always kind of took that feeling with me as the game kind of progressed, But I would say the thing about this game that really kind of shook me the most was just how many bosses they included
Yes.
in this
Mm-hmm.
game compared to the first one. And I mean, usually like big bad bosses, they do get their own title cards, and they have that
Mm-hmm.
stylized, pop up on the screen and all that.
Little entrance. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. But this one really kind of takes your breath away. I mean, and I know we keep comparing 1 and 2 to each other, but 2 really did ramp it up. And there's a very specific battle that I'm thinking of where you fight a boss called the Bunker. And I remember the first time I fought the Bunker, I was like going, wait, what? Is this like is this a building? What am I actually going into here? And and then
Mm-hmm.
you get to it, and like there's like a little lead in, and you're climbing up this like, big tall mountainside. You get to the top finally, and then you realize that Bunker is actually a massive ship that you have to fight on your own somehow. And I mean, and it just, you just
Mm-hmm.
sit back and you go, oh my God, this is so grand. Like, this is such a huge boss to fight.
Mm-hmm.
And I was actually kind of in awe of it, that I didn't even realize I was being hit. And I was like, oh, okay, I need to move. So, I,
Mm-hmm.
so I mean, God, I had fun getting my ass kicked in this game. I don't know.
Yeah, and that's the thing when you look at that, because those are obviously like storyline bosses, like main quest sort of thing. But even on the side, when you have like the job board and you're doing side quests,
Yeah.
there are just fun, bigger, lootier bosses to those side quests than there were in the first game, and a lot of them have really fun references. There's a Thunderdome reference in this
Yeah.
game. There's also a Godzilla and Mothra reference in this game. So like you see these things, and it's kind of like it gives you a reason to want to do the side quests, as opposed to like, hey, you know what? I'm a completionist. I do them because I have to do them, otherwise I haven't beaten the game. And then while you're doing them, you're getting a chuckle and a laugh and some enjoyment out of it, as opposed to just it being something extra to do or being something that you feel like you have to do.
And the thing is, some of those bosses, they do spawn randomly too. Now you
Mm-hmm.
can still farm them just like you would any other boss in a Borderlands game, but they're not always guaranteed to be there. And to me, that actually made it even more fun to try and chase them down.
Mm-hmm.
There's a specific one called Donkey Mong. If you remember, he's like an oversized bully Mong that you can
Mm-hmm.
trigger at certain times, and it's not just fun to find him, it's also fun to farm him for a legendary rocket launcher that he has that fires, I think it's like either 3 or 5 missiles compared to just one, but it
Mm-hmm.
uses just one ammo. So it's like, I have a really fun time fighting you, but I also have a really fun time trying to get that rocket launcher because I fucking want it.
Yeah.
So, man,
Hmm.
I
So,
mean, and
uh,
yeah.
yeah, it's like I think we could talk all day about how this game just kind of builds and builds and builds on the first so well, between whether it's lore, its gameplay, or really any aspect of it. And I think that's why we may get down into the dirty of this, and it may be time to review the game.
Oh, I think so. I
Hmm.
absolutely do, because for one, it's not worth it for us to really get too deep into the story, because you don't really need much incentive to feel
Hmm.
compelled by this. So I I will say it's an emotional gut punch of a ride compared to number one, and I do not want to rob anybody of that development,
Hmm.
because this game, there's the handsome edition now. There's like multiple re-releases. It's on every generation. Definitely give it a try if you haven't. But Joe, as you have mentioned, let's get into some graphics. What we're going to
Yeah.
use our unit of measurement for this retro review is actually going to be out of a possible 5 vault keys. So, what
Hmm.
do you think, Joe? Let's kick it off.
Well, I mean, I already sang some praise to the graphics in this because it is a game that, because it's using this cell shading style, like I said, it really impacts how you kind of interpret the story or how you can handle the story. And that it helps lighten the load of, some of those gut punches or the relatively dark, like, setting that you're in. But on top of that, when it is cell shaded, it makes it very, very easy to remaster and have it still look and feel the same and be really crisp. So it's one of those things where it's by using this type of animation style, it's pretty timeless. So I have nothing but good things to say about using cell shading, and I'm going to go 5 vault keys out of 5 here.
Holy cow, we're coming right out with perfect scores.
Yeah.
Now, I actually agree with this because I thought that the concept of what they originally did with their original art direction and then going to the cell shade, that did create the unique personality and profile for this series. So I'm right there with you. Now, when it comes to graphics, one thing I want to point out that's specific to Borderlands that some games from the same generation struggle with a lot is when you do go from cinematic to standard gameplay,
Hmm.
this game doesn't struggle with a lot of things that even like a Prototype 2 that came out the same year does, right? We're talking about things like shadows and just collision and how that stuff looks. So there are some times where maybe like a weapon will look funny, you run up to somebody and like it kind of pokes through them, whatever. That stuff
Hmm.
happens.
Yeah.
But when we're just talking normal shadows and how cinematics run, how characters interact with their environment, this game does not struggle there. It looks really crisp, as you mentioned, that cell shading, the comic book kind of style look. This game doesn't have a whole lot of graphic issues or glitches. You don't even really notice any real slowdown when you have a ton of stuff on screen. So, and I know that's a hardware thing, but I'm just painting a picture here. So, I agree with you. I think graphics wise, this is a fantastic triumph of a game. As big as it is, hits these points routinely. So 5 out of 5 for me.
Bam.
Now,
Hmm.
as we get to the gameplay, this I'm going to say this: for a game that sold 20 million units, that's already impressive.
Hmm.
But as recent as 2020, this game still has 1 million like users,
Wow.
that are
Hmm.
that are coming back and playing it. And Gearbox had put a ton of time into this game, but they also kept making a ton of extra content and DLC for it.
Hmm.
So I think there's like 5 different DLCs. They kept incentivizing us to come back with the golden keys, if you remember the Switch codes that you would get to come back.
Yes. Hmm.
So those are like small pieces of why the gameplay is so addictive. You can go get a bitchin' brand new weapon out of that chest that
Hmm.
a lot of people don't have access to. You never know what you're going to get, and then you can go out there and go do a run with it. So obviously, I love the gameplay of this because I thought the character builds fantastic. Every one of them is well thought out. They're a
Hmm.
ton of fun, and even if we just negate that for a moment, you've got multiple different modes of this game. Like the main story, like the original story, pretty easy to get through. You level as you normally would, but then you can do game plus, and I mean it gets incrementally harder. But man, that I love that challenge.
Hmm.
I don't know if you do as well, but man, I love the idea of going out there and like, you know what, I did pretty good in that first run. Let's see what the next difficulty's like, and I mean, there's a reason why I spent hundreds of hours on this game. Whether it's a side
Hmm.
mission, whether it's the loot and going after bosses and farming them, there's all kinds of stuff you can do in this game. So for me, gameplay, absolute 5 out of 5.
Yeah. Um, and going back and replaying this to just kind of like get in the mood for reviewing it and doing it again. This is I really can't argue that score, because looking at things that they did to add on from what you did in the first game, I mean, you've got a few new guns that are fun, you've got new vehicles that are fun to drive around in, and they respond well, and they're just fun to be in, to the point where like you have the option of fast traveling, but because of the size of the map, it's not like insurmountable. Like it's going to take you like forever to drive to a spot and hop out and do what you need to do. So while you can fast travel, it gives you the option of how you want to play the game, and you're going to be able to enjoy it either way. Whether you're like, nope, I'm going to get through the story and go from point to point and just fast travel because I've been around the map. I can now do this faster, and that's how I want to play it. Or it's like, no, I want to like run over shit as I'm driving from one place to the next, or see what's going on and see what random spawns are out there so you can enjoy it. I feel like the game responded very well. I don't remember like issues of like me falling through the map at any point during this game, or having like dropped inputs, or making it, or like using a weapon that I hated because it felt bad or didn't respond well. Like you just had weapons that were favorites because you liked like the DPS, or you liked the additional effect that they had, but like none of them felt clunky, none of them felt bad, none of them felt like they didn't do what they were supposed to do. So because of all of that, I'm gonna go 5 vault keys out of 5 on this.
And I even need to add something to that, Joe. So in the first game, you had your shock, fire, and like caustic, acidic damage, right? In this game, they also added that iridium-based slag, weapon damage type, which actually enhances the amount of damage you do with the other types. And so you could go through your first playthrough never using slag, because they do still make it like it's a challenge, but you can get through it. On the next playthroughs, they absolutely incentivize you to flip between your weapons, and flipping between them is also, it's not a difficult thing to do. Like they make it so that weapon flips are really easy, the loadouts are easy to use, and so yeah, I mean, I can't give it bonus points. No. But to that point, Joe, replay value, what are you thinking here?
This one's high. Like this is because like you said, like you've got New Game Plus, so you can go back, replay the story. Things are just incrementally harder each time you go back and replay it. But the bonus of that is that you can have a friend jump in and help you with it. And it's not like, and it's weird, right? I feel slightly hypocritical where like I can complain about Destiny and say like, oh, now that the story's over, the real game begins, and I'm going to keep grinding the same raids over and over again for different loot and different stuff. And like, that makes me hate the game. But here it works, and it works very well, where you can replay through the main storyline, you can bring a friend along with you, and just kind of go to town on it. And it honestly feels just as fun the second time around as it did the first time. So this is a rare case where I'm going to say replay value is going to be a 5 out of 5 vault keys for me on this one.
Holy cow. I think in the history of this show, I think you've only given that replay value metric maybe like twice.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't happen much for you.
It's hard for me, especially when it comes like story-based games, because like I typically don't want to other than Uncharted, which I play every year, like I don't typically go back through and play them again. So it's got to basically, for replay value, it's fighters or racers that do it for me. So for this game to have that, pretty big.
I was gonna say, dude, you're not gonna get a lot of disagreement from me on this one, because I love playing games on my own. I know I've told you before, like I am a solo master. I love playing by myself on these types of games. But this is one of the few games where I would keep like drop in, drop out multiplayer always on. Didn't care what I was doing. Didn't care if Pandora got harder, if somebody joined me. Hop on in, because those are some of the most fun experiences. I met random people. I'm a trophy hunter outside of, just enjoying the games. And so I would meet other people that were hunting for trophies that way, and we'd help each other out.
Yeah.
There's also a time where I had gotten through first playthrough, got through the second one, and I was like, I wouldn't say sunsetting, but I was like, maybe not playing it as much. And that's when I realized I still needed to fight this optional boss called Terramorphous, the Invincible.
Oh.
Just this massive tentacle thing that you have to pay iridium to get into to fight. And I was like, you know what? Let's do that. Let's see what this is all about. And that actually added an additional, like, I can't even think how many hours it added. But like, you would strategize, you would join up with people. And I was like, you know what? These guys are fighting this and winning really easy compared to these other ones. And it led to me connecting with people and going, hey, what actual equipment loadouts do you have? Because I noticed you did something incredible there. And that's how I actually found out more about the game, because people were getting these unique items that when you combine them with certain equipment, you become like a one-man army versus like legendary bosses in the game. So for me, I kept finding stuff as I played this game, even after hundreds of hours. Almost every week I played it. So for me, yeah, it's going to be a 5 out of 5. There's no doubt there.
And not to mention like the near like infinite combination of like weapon loadouts you can produce in this game. Like you can just keep playing it and having different things to use on top of finding different things to do. So again, like we can't give additional keys. Otherwise, we're breaking the scale and we have to make new scales, and who wants to make new scales? So just there's a lot to keep you coming back here.
Totally, man. Which of course brings us to that make or break, part of the rating scale, which is the music. Now, Borderlands is one of those games, Joe, that I can't name a single track from.
Yep.
I know the vibe of the score. I know what they usually try to achieve with it, which fits extremely well with like some of the desert settings and what they're looking to do. So they've done that stuff well. Now, one of the composers, of course, Joe, is one of the favorites of this program, which is Jesper Kyd, Assassin's Creed fame. This guy brings it. So I know what I'm getting with the music in this series, but there's not like an emotional attachment to it. Yeah. So it gets the point across. It does what it needs to do. But because of that, it's going to get a 4 out of 5 from me, because it's not bad. It's not, it's not tear inducing, but it's good.
Yeah. And this is pretty much the same idea. Like, again, I can't, other than like the trailer for this, like which uses In the Jungle, I believe.
Actually, no, this is Short Change Hero by the Heavy.
Okay, because that's the thing. I thought it was another Heavy song. I looked up trailers for it. I'm like, it's got to be a Heavy thing. I looked up another trailer, and there was one that was In the Jungle Tonight. No, the Lion Sleeps Tonight, not In the Jungle. The Lion Sleeps Tonight. Both of them work well for it. Like it's something where like the trailer music works well that they used, but like we can't use that for like really anything. Because it's not going on when you're playing the game. Otherwise, again, like Assassin's Creed Revelations would just like, again, break a scale on that for how well that song worked for its trailer. And Assassin's Creed 3 would kill it, because I'm Coming Home had no business being the cinematic trailer to Assassin's Creed 3. I actually heard that song pop up on like a random, I use YouTube Music, and like it came up in like a shuffle, and I'm like, get that thing out of here. I can't listen to that fucking song. And it's all because it ruined Assassin's Creed 3's trailer for me. Didn't hate the song before, hated it after it was used there. But anyway, like the music is there and it never feels out of place, but it doesn't feel like it really adds to the game all that much. So I'm going to go a little lower and go with like a 3.5 vault keys, 3.5 vault keys for me on the music here.
I think that's fair. I do.
Yeah.
I mean, because and for folks that haven't played Borderlands before, the Heavy and Borderlands have a very unique relationship. And there's usually always music featured by the Heavy in a Borderlands game. So I love the band. Short Change Hero is one of my favorite songs. I love that. Whenever it comes on, I listen to it all the way through. But when we're talking about like original music for a game, like I'm not gonna use the endorsed, music. I'm gonna be thinking about like what was the original score, what was the game trying to do with that music, and did it work? And I think the heavy works no matter where you put them in a Borderlands game, but that's not what's playing when you're fighting the warrior at the end, this massive dragon, right? You're not playing that. So
I mean, you're welcome to turn the music all the way down to the option screen and just play the heavy on loop while you're playing. And if it works for you, it works for you. But, it's not what the game does, so we can't rate it off of that.
Well, we did end up with a pretty damn solid rating, as that should surprise no one. But we ended up giving this game a 37.5 possible vault keys out of 40, which brings us to 93.75%.
Ooh, look at that. She got an A.
Dude, it's not a shock to me at all. And it ends up bringing this game into the upper echelon of games we've done ratings for, because there's only two others that get close to this, which would be The Walking Dead by Telltale Games, and then A Link to the Past. Those are the only two we've given about the same rating. So, I mean, I'm not shocked at all. I think Borderlands is one of the greatest first-person shooters that's come out in the last 15 years. And it's because of the depth, the amount of things you can do, not just in customizing a character, but also in the additional content that's there. So it's, I'm giving the Italian hand motions for those watching the video, but the audio version needs to see it.
Oh my gosh. So what we're saying is, please go out and play that game. But until then, we would like to thank you for listening to our podcast, as we are always, always thankful for everything and all the support the Dissection crew gives us week after week. It goes a really long way, and if any of you did make it here by accident because you just saw we were talking about Borderlands today, if you could drop us a review or maybe a like or subscribe so you could keep hearing more about our crazy antics and thoughts on video games and properties of yesteryear, we would really appreciate it.
And we also love hearing from you as always, so feel free to message us over at digitaldissectionpodcast@gmail.com. We are pretty much always talking about pop culture on all of the social media channels that we have, but we always like to hear commentary from you too. So we welcome your ideas for future shows and really anything else you'd like to discuss, so long as it's tastefully done. And until next time, Vault Hunters, keep on dissecting.